and welcome to this short series all about beavers, where you get to find out about these creative ecosystem engineers and what it means now that they're being reintroduced across Britain.
Most people underestimate the power of nature to self-regulate and produce species that heal themselves. Not Florida. In 2018, Florida wildlife officials made a decision that, at the time, sounded completely irrational. It still is, if you look at it today. They captured 328 beavers from overcrowded areas and released them into 15,000 acres of barren wetland in Florida. No trees, no real vegetation, just cracked, exhausted earth. Everyone agreed it was a guaranteed disaster. But 6 years later, this happened. Join us in this video as we explore Florida's crazy bet on nature and what it produced. What happened in Florida? To understand how dramatic the transformation was, you have to picture what the land looked like in 2018. The area sits in the Florida Panhandle near the Apalachicola River. In the 1950s, it was a pristine wetland, cypress swamps, hardwood forests, winding streams filled with fish. It was alive. Then developers drained it. They carved a network of ditches across the land and converted it to farmland. At first, it worked. Then, disaster struck. The water table dropped nearly 15 feet. The rich, organic wetland soil dried out and oxidized, releasing decades of stored carbon into the air. The soil became acidic. Crops failed after about 20 years because the nutrients were gone. By the 1980s, the corporations walked away. What they left behind looked nothing like a wetland. You could stand there and not see a single tree. The old drainage ditches cut the land into stiff geometric sections. The ground hardened into compacted clay mixed with dead organic debris. When it rained, water didn't soak into the soil. It rushed through the ditches straight into the river.
During rain, water rushed through the ditches into the river without soaking into the soil.
When drought came, the land didn't just dry, it turned to dust. Nothing grew there except thin patches of invasive grass. No birds nested, no frogs bred, no movement, no sound. Aerial surveys showed almost no wildlife at all. The state of Florida owned the land. 14,782 acres of ecological emptiness. It cost money to maintain and gave nothing back. No habitat, no revenue, no purpose. Restoring it the traditional way felt nearly impossible. Reflooding the area would mean constructing expensive water control systems and then waiting decades for native plants to slowly return. The projected cost? $87 million over 30 years. And even then, success wasn't guaranteed. Then someone suggested something that sounded absurd. Let the beavers fix it. Dr. Sarah Martinez, a restoration ecologist with Florida Fish and Wildlife, proposed what many people saw as ecological suicide. Release beavers, animals that depend on trees for food and building materials, onto land with zero trees. No food drops, no artificial ponds, no safety net. Just release them and see what happens. Her idea wasn't random. It was grounded in behavioral research from the 1990s. Studies showed that when beavers can't find trees, they don't simply starve or leave. They adapt. They use whatever they can find. Grass, sticks hauled from miles away, even invasive plants, to build dams. Those dams slow and trap water. Trapped water changes everything. Moisture returns to the soil. Vegetation begins to grow. New plants provide food. With more food, the beavers expand their dams. With more dams, more wetlands form. It becomes a feedback loop. But Martinez understood something even more important. How crazy was Martinez's idea? How easily would it become a success? Or not? Keep watching to find out. The trouble with the beaver idea. Beavers aren't just dam builders. They are ecosystem engineers.
These constructions have earned the beaver the nickname ecosystem engineer.
One beaver family doesn't simply reshape a small pond. They trigger ripple effects across entire watersheds. Water flow changes. Soil chemistry shifts. Plants return. Insects multiply. Birds follow. Amphibians breed. Predators return. If enough beavers were released at carefully selected locations, their dams could connect, forming a network of wetlands that would begin restoring itself. The plan was straightforward. Capture more than 300 beavers from areas where they were overpopulated, causing flooding on roads and farmland. Relocate them to the abandoned wetland. No supplemental feeding. No artificial infrastructure. Let nature take over. The total budget? $680,000, mostly for trapping, transportation, and 2 years of monitoring. Compared to the $87 million restoration proposal, the beaver plan felt almost free, which is exactly why so many people were convinced it would crash and burn. Florida approved the project in April 2018. By August, 328 beavers had been released across 47 different sites scattered throughout the 15,000 acres. And then they waited. For the first 3 months, it looked like the critics were absolutely right. Aerial surveys in September 2018 revealed that nearly 40% of the beavers had already migrated away from their release sites. Trail cameras showed them wandering, searching for something better. Some were found dead, likely from heat stress or simply not finding enough food. The ones that stayed tried to build dams, but the dams were weak. Crude mounds of mud and grass, barely 2 feet tall, stacked awkwardly inside the old drainage ditches. Most collapsed within days when water rushed through. The few that held up created small puddles, maybe 30 feet across, that evaporated within a week. By October, environmental groups were demanding that the project be shut down. They argued it was cruel to strand beavers on land that couldn't support them. Local news outlets ran stories calling it another government waste of taxpayer money. At public meetings, Dr. Martinez and her team received massive backlash. It looked like failure. But then, something shifted. Between the 4th and 8th months, something incredible began to happen. From November 2018 through February 2019, Florida entered its dry season, the worst possible time for a water-dependent experiment. No rain should have meant no water. No water should have meant no beavers. Instead, trail cameras started capturing something unexpected. What was that? How much progress was this going to mark? Keep watching to find out. How the beavers adapted. The beavers had stopped building dams inside the drainage ditches. They seemed to realize the water moved too fast there, too much force, too little control. So they adapted. They began constructing dams at the natural low points between the ditches.
Instead, they were building dams at the low points between ditches.
Places where rainwater would briefly pool before draining away. These weren't massive structures, just 3 or 4 feet high, but they were placed with surprising precision, strategically positioned to trap every drop of rain. It was the first quiet sign that something might actually be working. And this is where everything changed. In December 2018, the first major rainstorm rolled through. Normally, that water would have rushed straight through the drainage ditches and emptied into the river within hours. But this time, it didn't. Those small, unimpressive dams the beavers had built held the water back. The shallow puddles that were barely 30 feet wide in October expanded to nearly 200 feet across by January. And this time, they didn't evaporate. The dams were deep enough to retain real volume. Standing water triggered something critical. Buried beneath that dry, lifeless soil were seeds. Seeds from the original wetland ecosystem. They had been dormant for decades, waiting for the right conditions. Water woke them up. By February 2019, monitoring teams began spotting patches of wetland vegetation forming around the new ponds. Sedges, rushes, even small willow saplings are pushing up through the softened ground. The beavers noticed immediately. They fed on the new growth, but not recklessly. Beavers are selective. They harvest certain plants for food and building material while leaving others untouched. The untouched plants kept growing. The ones that were cut regenerated from their roots. Many wetland species are built for that kind of disturbance. What looked like destruction was actually renewal. By March 2019, 8 months after release, the surviving beaver population had stabilized at around 215 individuals. They had formed 47 distinct family groups, each maintaining dams in its chosen territory. And this time, the dams were holding. Spring 2019 brought heavy rainfall. Instead of draining away, the water stayed. The 47 dams, now trapping massive volumes of runoff, held enough water. What had once been scattered ponds a few hundred feet wide began expanding into quarter-mile wetlands behind the larger structures. And the beavers didn't stop building. A dam that stood 3 feet high in January rose to 7 feet by May. They reinforced weak sections, extended their walls, layered mud over sticks and vegetation. As water backed up behind one dam, it spilled into the next. Ponds began merging. What started as isolated pockets turned into connected wetland systems. The largest structure, built by what researchers nicknamed the Alpha Colony, stretched 450 feet across and created a 14-acre pond behind it. For the first time in decades, the land was holding water the way it was always meant to. That 14-acre pond changed everything. What did this shift lead to? How far could the beavers sustain this reawakening of the soil? Let's see. How the beavers recreated a dead ecosystem. It didn't just hold water. It lifted the entire water table for hundreds of yards in every direction. The hard, compacted clay began to soften. The soil slowly rehydrated. The old drainage ditches, once designed to pull water away, started backing up as beaver dams blocked their flow. Instead of racing toward the river, water began spreading outward, horizontally, across the land. And then the vegetation exploded. By July 2019, satellite images showed something almost unbelievable. Nearly 30 yards of the land within 500 yards of beaver ponds had turned green. But it wasn't just grass. Willows shot up 10 to 15 feet tall. Wax myrtles sprouted in clusters. Buttonbush formed dense thickets. Even cypress seedlings, long assumed to be gone from the region, began emerging from buried seed banks in the soil. The ecosystem wasn't being planted, it was remembering itself. With real trees now growing, the beavers upgraded their construction. They began cutting proper timber. The flimsy mud piles of early months evolved into reinforced structures. Interwoven branches sealed tightly with packed mud and vegetation. These were no longer fragile dams. They were engineered. They held during heavy rain. They redirected the flow. They shaped the land, and the wildlife followed. By fall 2019, bird surveys recorded 47 species using the restored wetlands, species absent from the area for decades. Wading birds like herons and egrets stalked the shallow waters. Ducks returned during migration. Ospreys nested in the tallest dead trees left standing from the original forest. Amphibians responded even faster. In 2018, researchers could barely find a frog or salamander. By late 2019, they documented thriving breeding populations of at least 8 species. The beaver ponds created an ideal habitat, shallow, plant-rich water perfect for spawning. The land was alive again. By 2021, just 3 years after the first release, the transformation was undeniable. The original 47 beaver colonies had grown to 83. The total beaver population was now estimated between 340 and 360 individuals, more than were originally released. They weren't just surviving, they were breeding. And that marked the real turning point. The wetlands were now self-sustaining. Beavers were no longer scrambling to build from scratch. They were maintaining, strengthening, and expanding an existing network of dams. Vegetation had grown dense enough to provide food year-round. The system was feeding itself. What was once 15,000 acres of ecological failure had become a functioning wetland ecosystem, built not by machines or million-dollar infrastructure, but by animals doing what they evolved to do. The ponds had grown deep enough to survive dry seasons without drying up completely. By 2022, aerial surveys revealed something extraordinary. About 6,200 acres, roughly 42% of the original 15,000-acre dead zone, had been transformed into a functional wetland. Not perfectly restored to its 1950s glory, not pristine, but alive. What had once been an ecological desert was now holding water, supporting layered vegetation, and sustaining wildlife year-round. The largest dam complex, maintained by descendants of the original Alpha colony, had expanded into a 78-acre wetland. That single structure held back enough water to rehydrate hundreds of surrounding acres. The land around it, once cracked clay, had become dense marshland with vegetation towering up to 12 feet tall. And the predators came. Alligators moved into the larger ponds. River otters followed the beavers and established their own territories. Bobcats were spotted hunting along the wetland edges. The ecosystem wasn't just functioning, it was balancing itself. In 2018, the land was nearly worthless. By 2022, the restored wetlands were generating an estimated $4.7 million per year in documented ecosystem services. Flood control through natural water retention, water purification through soil and plant filtration, carbon sequestration in regrowing vegetation, and rebuilding organic soils and wildlife habitat supporting both commercial and recreational species. All of it was achieved for $680,000. What did the beavers really do to the wetlands? Keep watching to find out. What the beavers really did. The traditional plan would have spent $87 million and likely still been years away from meaningful results. The beavers accomplished measurable restoration in 4 years for less than 1% of the projected cost. By 2023 and 2024, word spread. Researchers from across the world traveled to Florida to study what had happened. Because what this project demonstrated wasn't just a local success, it was a shift in thinking. What Florida proved is that beavers don't simply build dams. They create positive feedback loops. Dams trap water. Water allows plants to grow. Plants provide food and building materials. More materials allow stronger, larger dams, and stronger dams reshape entire landscapes. Instead of forcing restoration with heavy machinery and rigid engineering, this approach lets biology do the work, letting a native ecosystem engineer restart the system from within. What once sounded insane now looked like a blueprint. Better dams trapped more water. More water meant more plants. More plants meant more building material. Stronger dams meant even more water retention. The cycle fed itself, and once it reached critical mass, it didn't need help anymore. But here's what truly stunned scientists. The beavers did all of this without an existing forest. For decades, the assumption was simple. Beavers need trees to survive. No trees, no beavers. Florida shattered that belief. The project proved that if you release enough individuals, give them space, and allow breeding populations to establish, beavers can bootstrap an ecosystem from almost nothing. By 2023, peer-reviewed studies began documenting exactly how the transformation happened. First, soil regeneration. Beaver ponds slowed the water enough to trap sediment and organic debris. Over time, the dead, compacted clay became buried under layers of rich organic mud. Soil samples taken in 2024 showed carbon content had increased by 340% near beaver ponds compared to 2018 levels. The soil wasn't just wetter, it was alive again. The water table across the region had risen between 8 and 12 feet. Monitoring wells showed groundwater levels approaching conditions last recorded before the wetlands were drained in the 1940s. In 6 years, beavers had reversed nearly 70 years of hydrological damage. By 2024, the numbers were staggering. 127 bird species, up from 12 in 2018, 34 mammal species, up from 3, and 18 reptile and amphibian species, up from zero. The restored wetlands were now supporting biodiversity levels comparable to untouched natural areas, and the expansion continued. By 2024, the beaver population was estimated between 410 and 450 individuals,
Beavers officially began living freely in the wild.
maintaining more than 100 active dams. Wetland coverage had grown to approximately 8,300 acres, about 56% of the original 15,000-acre area. At current rates, projections suggest 80 to 85% wetland coverage by 2030. Here's why scientists are, frankly, astonished. This wasn't supposed to work. Traditional ecological restoration follows a strict sequence. First, you rebuild hydrology with engineered systems. Then you replant vegetation. Then you wait, sometimes decades, for soil conditions to stabilize. Only after that do you reintroduce wildlife. Animals come last. But Florida did something entirely different, and it worked. What did Florida's experiment teach the world? Who else is trying out this experiment? Let's see. How Florida's system is changing the world. Florida flipped the script. Instead of rebuilding the land first and bringing animals back later, they did the opposite. They released animals into a dead zone and let the animals rebuild the land. And somehow, it worked faster, better, cheaper. The implications are massive. Across the world, millions of acres of degraded wetlands sit abandoned because traditional restoration is too expensive or too slow. Florida demonstrated that introducing ecosystem engineers, species that physically reshape their environment, can revive these landscapes for a fraction of the cost. Other countries are already paying attention. The UK launched a similar project in 2023, releasing beavers onto degraded farmland to restore wetlands naturally. In Australia, researchers are debating whether introducing beavers, a non-native species there, could help repair damaged billabongs, though the idea remains controversial. Even China is studying whether this approach could help restore wetlands along the Yellow River. The technical term for this strategy is rewilding through keystone species reintroduction. The plain English version: let the beavers fix what we broke, because they're better at it than we are. Walk through those same 15,000 acres in 2026, and you wouldn't recognize them. Where cracked clay once baked in the sun, cypress trees now rise 20 feet tall. Where straight drainage ditches once sliced through the land, slow, winding streams now hold fish. Where there was silence, there's now a constant soundtrack. Birds calling overhead, frogs chorusing at dusk, water spilling gently over layered beaver dams. The original dam, built by the so-called Alpha Colony, a flimsy 3-foot mud pile in 2018, is now a 12-foot-tall, 600-foot-long engineered structure. If humans tried to build something comparable, it would cost millions. The beavers maintain it themselves. Any damage? Repaired within days. And perhaps the most remarkable part of all, the project is essentially finished. There's no need for constant funding, no massive maintenance crews, no heavy machinery. The beavers are sustaining the system on their own, expanding it, reinforcing it, living in it. What started as an idea many called insane has become one of the most powerful examples of nature restoring itself, if we're willing to step back and let it. The wetlands are now self-sustaining. Florida spends about $40,000 a year monitoring the site, but the beavers no longer need human help. They are doing exactly what they evolved to do: building dams, creating wetlands, and supporting entire ecosystems.
They will build dams to create depth of water so they feel safe.
From 2018 to 2024, the total cost, including monitoring and research, was roughly $1,100,000. The payoff? 8,300 acres of fully functional wetland, generating millions of dollars in ecosystem services each year and supporting biodiversity that had been locally extinct for decades. Florida released hundreds of beavers onto barren land with no trees because traditional restoration methods had failed. Nobody expected it to work. But nature has been doing this for millions of years. long before humans wrote ecological restoration plans. Sometimes, the best way to heal a broken ecosystem is simple. Reintroduce the animals that evolved to build it. Then step aside and let them do their work. Why beavers? How are beavers built for this task? Keep watching to find out. How beavers are best suited for the task. Remarkably, no species might have been able to restore as much as these beavers have done in such a short time. Why? Beavers are part of the rodent suborder Castorimorpha, which also includes kangaroo rats, kangaroo mice, and gophers. Today, beavers are the only living members of the Castoridae family. They first appeared in North America during the late Eocene and later spread to Eurasia via the Bering Land Bridge in the early Oligocene around 33 million years ago during a period of major animal turnover called the Grande Coupure. Early beavers, or basal castorids, had some unique traits. Their cheek teeth fit together in a complex way. The upper teeth were arranged in parallel rows. Premolars were only slightly smaller than molars. They had a third set of premolars, a hole in the inner ear bone called the stapes, a smooth palate with the opening near the back, and a longer snout. Later, castorids evolved slightly different features. Simpler tooth occlusion, V-shaped upper teeth towards the back, larger second premolars, no third premolars, or stapes hole, a more grooved palate with the opening shifted forward, and smaller front openings of the palate. During the late Oligocene, a subfamily called Paleocastorinae appeared in North America. These were mostly small, burrowing beavers with big front legs, flattened skulls, and short tails, perfect for digging underground. By the early Miocene, around 24 million years ago, castorids began adopting a semi-aquatic lifestyle. The Castoroideinae subfamily, closely related to modern beavers, included giant species like castoroids in North America and Trogontherium in Eurasia. Castoroides could reach nearly 3 meters in length and weigh between 90 and 125 kilograms.
It rivaled the size of a small black bear. Its name was Castoroides, and of course it's extinct now because you would definitely know if it was still around.
Fossils of another genus, Dipoides, have been found near piles of chewed wood, though they weren't as skilled at cutting wood as modern beavers. Researchers believe that modern beavers and the Castoroideinae shared a common ancestor that ate bark. Over time, behaviors like dam and lodge building likely evolved from bark-eating habits, helping beavers survive harsh subarctic winters. So far, there's no evidence that other rodent species exhibit this behavior. The genus Castor probably originated in Eurasia. The earliest known fossil, C. neglectus, was found in Germany and dates back 12 to 10 million years ago. Studies of mitochondrial DNA suggest that the two living beaver species share a common ancestor from around 8 million years ago. Ancestors of the North American beaver crossed the Bering Land Bridge about 7.5 million years ago. During their evolution, castor may have competed with Castoroideinae species, leading each group to occupy different ecological niches. Fossil species like C. praefiber were likely ancestors of the Eurasian beaver, while C. californicus, from the early Pleistocene of North America, resembled but was larger than today's North American beaver. Beavers are the second largest rodents alive today after capybaras. Beavers are built for life in water. Their streamlined bodies and powerful muscles allow them to drag heavy loads. Their fur is incredibly dense, with 12,000 to 23,000 hairs per square centimeter, keeping them warm, buoyant, and protected from predators. The long guard hairs, 5 to 6 centimeters, are usually reddish-brown, but can range from yellowish-brown to nearly black, while the soft underfur, 2 to 3 centimeters, is dark gray. Beavers shed their fur every summer, molting to maintain a healthy, insulating coat. They have large, sturdy skulls with powerful chewing muscles, perfect for gnawing through wood. Each beaver has 4 chisel-shaped incisors that grow continuously throughout its life. These teeth are coated with thick enamel, colored orange or reddish-brown by iron compounds, and the lower incisors have roots nearly as long as the entire lower jaw. In addition, beavers have 1 premolar and 3 molars on each side of their jaws, totaling 20 teeth. The molars are ridged in a complex pattern to grind tough, woody material. What else makes the beaver such an interesting creature? Keep watching to find out. The beaver's fascinating structure. A beaver's eyes, ears, and nostrils are positioned high on the head, allowing them to stay above water while the rest of the body remains submerged. Both nostrils and ears have valves that close underwater, and their eyes are protected by a translucent, nictitating membrane. To prevent water from entering the lungs, the epiglottis sits in the nasal cavity rather than the throat, and the back of the tongue can rise to create a waterproof seal. Even while biting or chewing underwater, a beaver can close its lips behind its incisors to keep water out. Their front feet are nimble and dexterous, capable of grasping and manipulating food or objects and digging tunnels. The hind feet are larger, webbed for swimming, and feature a double nail on the second innermost toe for grooming. Beavers swim at around 8 kilometers per hour, using only their webbed hind feet for propulsion, while their front feet fold neatly under the chest. On the water's surface, the hind legs move one after the other, but underwater, both legs kick in unison. On land, beavers can seem awkward, but they can move quickly when threatened and even carry objects while walking on their hind legs. A beaver's iconic tail is more than just a paddle. Its base is conical, muscular, and covered in hair, while the remaining 2/3 is flat and scaly. The tail serves many purposes. It acts as a support when the beaver stands upright to chew through trees, functions as a rudder while swimming, and even stores fat for winter. It also has a special countercurrent blood vessel system that helps the beaver stay cool in warm weather and retain heat in the cold. Beavers have internal sex organs, and males possess a penis with a cartilaginous bone called a baculum. Uniquely, beavers have a single opening, a cloaca, used for reproduction, scent marking, urination, and defecation. This feature, which most mammals have lost, may help reduce the risk of infection in dirty water. Their digestive system is remarkable. Their intestines are 6 times the length of their body, and the caecum is twice the size of the stomach. Special microorganisms in the caecum allow beavers to digest roughly 30% of the cellulose in their diet. Beavers defecate in water, often leaving behind characteristic balls of sawdust. Female beavers have 4 mammary glands that produce milk with about 19% fat, higher than most rodents. Beavers also have 2 pairs of scent glands, castor sacs, located near the urethra, which secrete castoreum used mainly for marking territory, and anal glands, which produce an oily substance that waterproofs their fur and plays a role in individual and family recognition. Interestingly, in Eurasian beavers, anal secretions are darker in females than in males, while in North American beavers, it's the opposite. Beavers have brains that are surprisingly sophisticated for rodents. Their hypothalamus is much smaller than the cerebrum, which suggests higher intelligence. Their cerebellum is large, giving them precise control over movement in 3-dimensional spaces, whether swimming underwater or navigating tricky terrain, similar to how squirrels maneuver among tree branches. Most of their neocortex is devoted to touch and hearing, with the sense of touch being most acute in the lips and hands, rather than in the whiskers or tail. Their eyesight is relatively poor, especially underwater, where it doesn't match the clarity of an otter's vision. Beavers, however, have a keen sense of smell on land and to inspect scent marks, food, and other beavers. According to the IUCN Red List, both beaver species are currently listed as of least concern. The North American beaver is widespread across most of the United States and Canada, and can even be found in northern Mexico. It was introduced to Finland in 1937, later spreading to northwestern Russia and to Tierra del Fuego, Patagonia, in 1946. By 2019, The North American beaver population in Finland had begun moving closer to the range of the Eurasian beaver. Historically, North American beavers were heavily trapped for their valuable fur and came close to extinction. Protective measures allowed their numbers to rebound, reaching an estimated 6 to 12 million by the late 20th century, still far below the original population, which may have been 60 to 400 million before the fur trade. In Tierra del Fuego, introduced populations were estimated at 35,000 to 50,000 individuals as of 2016. What happened in Florida is now being described as the most successful ecological restoration project in Florida's history. An animal that supposedly couldn't survive without trees somehow revived a dead landscape and rebuilt a thriving wetland ecosystem. And now, scientists around the world are studying and copying the strategy. What do you think about how the beavers restored the wetland in Florida? Share your thoughts in the comments section below. Thank you for joining us. Explore the innovative beaver solution introduced by the Florida government. We hope you found this video both insightful and interesting. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Click the next video on your screen to explore more groundbreaking solutions. See you there.